This planet had an ocean, deep, dark, covering an area larger than Earth's entire Arctic. Mars had beaches, waves, a sky you could stand under without a suit, and some scientists believe something may have even been alive in that water. Every single piece of that is gone. The ocean evaporated. The sky dissolved. The warmth bled away into space, degree by degree over hundreds of millions of years, and whatever lived in that water, if anything did, had nowhere left to go. This is what's left of the victim. A body with all the evidence of a former life, and no life left in it. Whoever killed Mars didn't leave in a hurry. It worked slowly, and it's still out there. Before we look at the suspects, we have to understand what we lost. 4 billion years ago, Mars was alive. Liquid water covered its northern hemisphere in an ocean deeper in places than the Gulf of Mexico. The atmosphere was thick enough to hold warmth. There was weather and chemistry. If you had looked at this solar system from outside, Mars and Earth would have looked like twins. But there was one other thing they shared. One thing a planet cannot survive without: a magnetic field. This was Mars's bodyguard, standing between the surface and the sun. Without it deflecting the continuous stream of charged particles that our sun constantly fires outward, the solar wind doesn't just hit the surface, it hits the atmosphere and begins to eat it. Without the shield, the solar wind went to work. Over hundreds of millions of years, the atmosphere thinned like a slow bleed. The pressure dropped. Liquid water became impossible. Oceans evaporated or froze into the ground. And then the temperature collapsed. This murder was methodical. So here's the question that no one has been able to fully answer. Who murdered Mars? 3 suspects are in the room. One of them is a serial offender with a history of this exact crime. One committed what may be the largest single act of violence in the history of our solar system. And finally, the one detectives almost missed might change everything we know about the death of Mars. The sun doesn't need a motive. That's what makes it the most dangerous kind of suspect. It isn't targeting Mars. It has no grievance. It is simply doing what it has always done, burning 600 million tons of hydrogen every second, throwing charged particles, radiation and magnetic pressure in every direction. This was an opportunistic crime. Every planet sits in its wrath, and the moment Mars's defenses went down, the opportunity opened. The question is, why some planets survive while others don't? In 2014, NASA sent a spacecraft to Mars specifically to answer this question. It was called MAVEN, and it spent years in orbit counting every particle of atmosphere being stripped away. What it measured was brutal. 100 grams of atmosphere are leaving Mars every second. And during a single solar storm in 2015, Mars lost in a few days what would normally take weeks. The chemical evidence is even more damning. Forensic analysis of the Martian atmosphere found a signature that only appears in one scenario: delayed escape. Its atmosphere had been reordered, a disproportionate concentration of heavy particles that couldn't escape as easily as lighter gases. The victim's timeline is in the chemistry: 4 billion years of slow bleed. But here's where the case turns cold again, because the sun has been doing same thing to Earth for 4 billion years, yet we are just fine. So, maybe our first suspect isn't the killer. The sun was only an instrument. This means that something else more sinister had been premeditating. Mars has a problem that has no comfortable answer. One half of the planet is ancient and battered. The other half looks almost new, smooth, low, and geologically strange. This divide has a name: the Martian dichotomy. The leading theory is that Mars suffered massive blunt force trauma. Something enormous, like a rock, possibly the size of the moon or larger, struck the northern hemisphere at a low angle. Forensic observation shows it wasn't a clean puncture. It was a devastating blow that may have cracked the planet and changed everything about how heat moved through its core. There is a scar on Mars that covers half the planet, a basin stretching nearly 9,000 kilometers across the northern lowlands. larger than any known impact in the solar system. If the theory holds, almost half of Mars is a single wound. Here is why this kills the magnetic field. The field isn't generated at the surface, it's generated deep inside, in the liquid metal core. Knock the generator hard enough, disrupt the heat flow inside it, and the current stops. In geological scale, the field collapses overnight. After that, Mars had no armor, and the solar wind found an open door. But we still can't prove the crime. The timing doesn't fit in cleanly. The impact could have been before the field died, and a single hit, however massive, may not have been enough alone. Mars needed to already be vulnerable, which brings us to the third suspect, this one the hardest to hear. In homicide cases, detectives learn early that sometimes the most dangerous suspect is the victim, because they made choices, one after another, that left them exposed, and by the time the real threat arrived, they had nothing left to defend themselves with. A planet keeps itself alive by retaining heat. The bigger the planet, the more heat it holds, the longer everything stays in motion. For small rocky planets, they run cold faster. Mars is less than 11% of Earth's mass. Maybe it was always going to run out of time, and maybe this was a suicide we've been mistaking for a homicide. Earth's crust moves. Plates collide and dive beneath each other constantly, recycling the surface and drawing heat up from the deep. Mars also had a geological process that kept it warm, kept the core churning and the field alive, but eventually the crust stopped moving, trapping the heat with nowhere to go. It pooled under the crust like a fever. For a while, that actually kept Mars warmer than it should have been. But it was a period of false stability. Underneath, the heat sources were exhausting themselves. The core was cooling from the outside in, and its field slowly dying. Yet Mars kept going anyway, orbiting the sun right up until the moment there was nothing left to protect it. It was slow self-neglect. So we have three suspects that all point at each other. The sun was the executioner but needed an opening. The impactor gave it the opening but needed a vulnerable target. The target had been making itself vulnerable for millions of years. This isn't a single murder, it's a conspiracy. And then in 2019, a lone witness came forward with evidence that no one in this investigation was prepared for. June 2019, the Curiosity rover is running a routine atmospheric check on what everyone believed was a confirmed dead planet. Its instruments detect methane at 21 times the highest level ever recorded on Mars. The team runs it again, checks the equipment and calibration, but the reading holds. 90% of atmospheric methane has one origin: living organisms. The other 10% comes from geological activity, heating rock, hydrothermal vents, and underground chemistry that only happens when a planet still has warmth and liquid water somewhere inside it, the kind of activity that only occurs on a planet that is still alive. But Mars is supposed to be dead. The ESA immediately redirected its trace gas orbiter to confirm the reading from above, but it found nothing. Neither team has been able to explain the discrepancy, so the methane file was never closed. It may have been a measurement error, maybe something localized, brief, too small for an orbiter to catch. Or it may be that whatever survived the collapse 4 billion years ago is still down there, hundreds of meters beneath a surface that looks completely dead from the outside. We came to investigate a closed case, but the body is still warm. The case is unsolved. We don't know the exact timing of the impact or what produced the methane, but the manner of death is not in dispute. A cascade, neglect, a catastrophic blow, and a star that finished the job. We look at Mars and think of it as something distant, but it once had a field just like ours, and ours is fading. On Earth, there is a region called the South Atlantic Anomaly, stretching from South America to southwestern Africa, where the field is measurably weaker than anywhere else on the planet. It has been growing for decades, satellites passing through it log elevated radiation. Scientists believe it signals a geomagnetic reversal in progress, a process where the poles shift and the field weakens globally for thousands of years during the crossing. The last time the poles flipped was 780,000 years ago. The only difference between Earth and Mars today is that our shield is still up. Remove it, and Mars becomes only a premonition of our future murder. Today, our victim had everything required to survive, but something took it anyway.